Well, ladies and gentlemen, as one person said to me this morning, I bet you've got no shortage of content at the moment. And no, I really don't. There is so much content and so much going on that I could really make videos for days. But before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, really help me grow the numbers. At the moment, YouTube isn't really promoting YouTube longs. They're promoting YouTube shorts. So you really need to share this video with friends in order for it to get a good reach. Anyway, let's get straight onto the news. And I've got to be honest and say that South Africa at the moment is struggling for any form of relevance. And we're going to get to that in a minute. Now, the Iranian embassy in South Africa confirmed that it was mourning. Yep, it was in mourning following the death of the Iranian supreme leader, the Ayatollah. Now, an Iranian embassy spokesperson accused the US of violating multiple international laws and describes the strikes as an attack on Iran's sovereignty. It's important to understand that at the moment, Donald Trump isn't going to win this war just by eliminating the top leadership in Iran. He needs the military and the police authorities to lay down their weapons and surrender, and for them themselves to suggest that regime change is what's needed. Without that, the war will go on for some time. Now, Donald Trump has actually warned the Iranian military and the police that they need to surrender and said that they would face severe consequences if they didn't. Now, the Iranian community in South Africa, I got to be honest, I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it's a thing. And they published a statement on the 1st of March 2026 referencing Operation Lion's Roar, and that's obviously the strikes against Iran. Now, the statement links current events to historical ties between the Persians and the Jewish people, including references to King Cyprus the Great and the modern Iran-Israel relations underneath Mohammed Pahlavi. Now, the statement states that Iran recognized the state of Israel during the Shah's era and that the two countries cooperated in trade, agriculture, medicine, and security. The statement says that the 1979 Islamic Revolution changed Iran's direction, alleging that the current regime had prioritized hostility towards Israel and support for regional proxies. The statement expresses support for the US-Israeli actions underneath Operation Lion's Roar, and thanks them for confronting the Iranian regime. The statement calls on the South African government to cease what it describes as political alignments with the Iranian regime. And it concludes with calls for future cooperation between Iran and Israel for peace and security for both nations. Unfortunately, as I said in my video yesterday, there is an unholy alliance between the left and Islam. So what we're still seeing is that political parties of the left continue to denounce the military actions, whilst those being liberated continue to celebrate their liberation, like this video.
Why are you protesting today?
We're protesting the U.S. attacks on Iran. This is straight up illegal war. Trump is bombing civilians, starting World War III.
Iranians are celebrating right now, thanking Trump for finally hitting the mullahs.
That's a lie! Pure propaganda. All Iranians are crying right now.
There are hundreds of videos online, people dancing.
Now, according to Iranian media, Iran has closed off many of the shipping routes that go past Iran, with Iran saying that they will fire on any ship trying to pass. Now, the shipping routes past Iran are actually described as carrying about 1/5 of global oil consumption, so they're quite important in terms of the free flow of oil to all nations. The actual passage itself is only around 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest, with shipping lanes being approximately 3 kilometers in each direction. So it's not a very big passage, but that itself actually makes it very easy to defend. Now, one report says that the closure left 150 ships stranded with war risk insurance cancelled, and mentions that 4 tankers have been destroyed and 2 seafarers have been killed. Another report says that Qatar has downed 2 Iranian Su-24 bombers and halted any form of natural gas production after the strikes, with spillover risks across Gulf energy infrastructure. We're going to talk about what that risk could be to us in South Africa. Now, the same report describes market moves. European gas prices are up 50% and oil is up nearly 9% on supply fears. Though it must be stressed that Netanyahu is quoted as saying that the US-Israel war on Iran is not going to take years and it's not an endless war, although I've got to be honest and say that remains to be seen. So, Treasury in South Africa is looking at what this potentially could mean for South Africa, and Treasury has argued that due to the improved public finances, that South Africa will actually have a buffer against any form of external shocks like major oil spikes, because that's what we're expecting now. We're expecting huge price increases in terms of oil. Now, Treasury's position includes a primary surplus of 131 billion rand through March 2027. Now, the Treasury Director General is quoted as saying that it would take a very large shock to derail the fiscal plans in South Africa, and the report cites a sensitivity of roughly around 60 billion rand as a scale that could materially push outcomes off track. So apparently South Africa says that because they now have this renewed discipline in terms of its spending, that we shouldn't really be hit that much by any forms of financial shocks. But the downside risks from the Iran war are mainly linked to global growth and oil prices, and some commodities like gold could move in ways that partially offset oil shocks. So because we actually supply gold, possibly that commodity, the increase in the cost of the commodities like gold, could mean we could offset that against the oil prices. Again, that remains to be seen because South Africa's output of gold isn't really that great. It's not like it was in years gone past. So what's the most likely outcome? Well, South African households are probably going to see higher fuel and food prices, and inflation could be a factor here. Now, some economists are quoted as saying that higher oil prices could also push up the cost of transport, which indirectly would have an impact on food costs and raise inflation. This could potentially affect any path to interest rate cuts, which may impact our home loans. Now, another form of disruption that the war could have could potentially be on aviation disruptions. This following UAE airspace closures, which have affected Emirates and Qatar Airways operations and caused cancellations at South African airports. Now, as I reported in my video yesterday, there's been 8 cancellations at OR Tambo, 4 at Cape Town International, and 2 at King Shaka. Now, travelers are reported as being advised to confirm flight status with airlines before going to airports and avoid themselves being stranded. Durko is suggesting that if you want any form of travel advice, go to them, although I don't know if I'd trust Durko with travel advice. Now, talking of Durko and the South African government, they're looking at the whole Iranian war and thinking to themselves, well, we're not really very relevant at the moment, are we? So they're trying to make themselves relevant, and they've issued a brand new statement. This is a joint statement between South Africa and Colombia. Now, the statement announces that the Hague Group will convene an emergency meeting, well, at the time of viewing, so this will be the 4th of March, so it will be today, effectively, in The Hague, and it will be around the accountability and enforcement of international law, co-chaired by South Africa and Colombia. Now, the whole focus of the meeting is to assess the implementations of measures linked to the ICJ case in July 2024, and discuss ways in which they can coordinate actions that could be taken against Israel following its war with Palestine. So yes, everybody's looking at the Iran war and going, no one gives a damn about Palestine at the moment, and South Africa is like, hold my beer. We're going to somehow make it relevant, and we're going to hold Israel accountable for its genocide in Gaza. Yep. Despite there being a ceasefire. In any case, this is highly unlikely to rouse Donald Trump's good side, which will be why some analysts are now suggesting that South Africa could face severe U.S. pressure due to perceived political alignments with Iran. These analysts are describing this as potentially a U.S. death penalty concept, and that's basically being cut off from the U.S. financial system as a risk scenario. Now, they're suggesting that because of the MTN-related allegations and the litigation risk that is occurring against MTN, specifically around terrorist financing. Now, MTN has denied any form of wrongdoing, but you've got to remember that underneath the U.S. Anti-Terrorism Act, the ATA, damages that could be effectively levied against MTN for any form of terrorist financing allegations could go up to around $8 billion US, and that's 80 billion rand as a potential scale of what the court cases against MTN could find. Now, because of South Africa's links to MTN, this does mean that there could potentially be a spillover between South Africa's sovereignty and the corporate loop. And effectively, that could mean that South Africa could find itself liable for the terrorist financing that could have occurred via MTN. Whether or not this is true or not remains to be seen and will be determined in the court of law. But given the current pressure being applied against Israel, given that America and Israel have aligned themselves against Iran in terms of their military intervention, it's highly likely that there will be pressure from the Trump administration to apply the maximum damages they can against South Africa and MTN as a whole. So let's move on to a final news story, and this actually is a news story around BEE, because I must admit I read 2 articles in this, and one I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then the second I was like, yeah, that's the ANC, like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And the first story is that the Finance Minister, Edon Gonagwana, is reported as saying the government is open to an honest debate on BEE's unintended consequences, whilst also framing BEE as tied to constitutional imperatives, though according to the news, he's open to somehow changing BEE to review the outcomes, because he understands that BEE is not having the intended consequences of what the program is supposed to do. And to be honest, it's just enriching ANC cadres. Now, obviously, this all comes on the back of the Department of Trade and Industry also suggesting that it was conducting a review on the BEE infrastructure and outcomes. Key proposals that have been put forward by the Department of Trade and Industry so far is the transformation fund model, where businesses could pay into a central fund to earn BEE points instead of selecting their own beneficiaries, with some suggestions being that the scorecard method that's currently used itself should be adjusted. All this came on the second article, because in a separate report there's been calls to tighten B-BBEE rules and make it more punitive to combat fronting. Now, who said that? Who's now promoting more BEE, not less? Well, it's the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, who's quoted as saying that B-BBEE is going nowhere, and that the path forward is reform, strengthening, and disciplined implementation. These communists are just like beyond the pale. The ANC, as I've said numerous times, are retarded. Now, the Trade Minister, Parks, is quoted as saying that his department is reviewing the B-BBEE system to assess what worked and how that can be improved, whilst the B-BBEE Commissioner is quoted as saying that there's around 60 fronting cases referred for prosecution that have all stalled, and that severe penalties, including financial fines, should be considered because, to be frank, actually implementing B-BBEE with all its sanctions is just, well, it's not really a thing. So with all that being said, it's probably a good thing that we've been hearing quite a lot about PM27 of recent, and that is the campaign for the ANC to elect Patrice Motsepe as the next leader of the ANC and potentially the next leader of the Republic if the ANC wins. It's still early doors, and many people are saying this is early campaigning and that should be discouraged because that's just horrendous. But the websites have already been created and individuals are already attempting to raise funding for Patrice. Now, I've got to say, if you look at morning show predictions, I'm pretty much spot on most of these things. When Trump first came to office, I did predict that he would go into Iran. And one individual did ask me who I thought would probably be the next leader of the ANC. And I said, Patrice Motsepe, even though he doesn't actually want to do the job, I did say the ANC is probably going to force him to do it. And that's pretty much happening. Anyway, that's the news of today. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And until next time, bye.
Have you been called a khayan, a traitor?
Of course.
And what is your answer?
Khayan to who? Traitor to who? Look, I'm an Arab, Israeli. Israel is my country. I'm fighting for my country. Get out, they tell me. Or fight, they tell me. Fight who? Fight the people that give me freedom of speech? Fight the people that give me freedom of religion? Do you want me to fight them? Why? I'm good in my country, despite the challenges. So I'm a traitor to whom? To the terrorist organization that kills Arabs and Jews like me? I'm a traitor to whom? To Hamas? Thank God that I'm a traitor to Hamas. I'm a khayin to Hamas. It's a blessing to be khayin to Hamas, because Hamas is a vicious terrorist organization. And in fact, I will fight Hamas. I will fight Hamas with my own hands. I fought Hezbollah with my own hands. I was injured in Lebanon. I will fight the Houthi. I will fight the Iranian regime. They're all terrorists or terror supporters. I'm the traitor? I'm not a traitor. I'm a proud Arab, a proud Israeli, and a proud defender of my country.